Today we're going to look at life's most important question. Life's most important question. I remember a true story of something happened in the Olympics. It was in the archery competition. That's where they have a bow and arrow and they have to shoot at a target. And they have lanes, like there's a target at the end here, then there's another lane here and a target. One man from one country was shooting at the target and he hit a bullseye right in the middle of the target. And then he was disqualified from the competition because he was aiming at the wrong target. He hit the wrong target. And the danger is in life is that we aim at the wrong target in our life. And when everything is finished, we will be disqualified by God. So we're looking at David. We're looking at the situation where he committed adultery with Bathsheba. He covered it over by killing her husband, making it look like an accident of war or an act of war and not his fault. And now Uriah is dead. And so I'm going to pick up the story in 2 Samuel 11, 26 and 27. This is after Uriah has died. This is what happens. It says this. When Uriah's wife heard that her husband was dead, she mourned for him. After the time of mourning was over, David had her brought to his house, and she became his wife and bore him a son. I'm going to leave out the last part. What David was doing is David was trying to look good to everybody around him. Nobody knew that he had committed adultery. Nobody knew that the baby that she was going to have was his. Everyone believed it was Uriah's child. So what does David do? He brings her to his house and marries her. Now, in that culture, that looked like he was doing a good thing by protecting a widow, bringing her into his clan to provide for her. So he looked good for all the people. But we know that in his heart, he had lusted after her, and he was bringing her in for other reasons. He had killed her husband, but nobody knew anything. So he was looking good for people. He wanted to please people. And one of the targets that sometimes we aim at is to please people, to live our lives according to what people will agree with, what people will think is good. What people say, wow, she's doing a great job. Look at what she's doing. That'll make us feel good. And in Proverbs 29:25, it says, fear of man will be a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord is kept safe. So if we worry about what people are going to say, it's going to be a trap for us. It's going to be a trap because it's going to keep us from doing what God wants us to do. This even happens in ministry. It happens where people say, wow, you have a lot of people coming to your ministry. You have this, you have all this success, and you feel good. But the real question is, what does God think? What does God think? Because if we're worried about what people think, if we have fear of man, it will be a trap for us, a trap. It'll get us into bad situations. I've gotten myself into bad situations. It can lead you into compromise. It can lead you into getting off of what God wants you to do just because you want to please somebody else. It can even have some people walk away from God because their family doesn't approve of what they're doing, and what their family thinks is more important than what God thinks in their hearts. Right? There have been people walk away from God because they're worried about what their family says. I know a man who was going to get baptized, but some of his family came and he said, "No, I can't do it now because my family is here. And I don't want to displease them by getting baptized." Fear of man is a trap. And if you have any of that in your heart, I want to please people, it will eventually lead to destruction. But let me read the last verse here that I left out of verse 27. I'll read the whole thing again. After the time of mourning was over, David had her brought to his house, and she became his wife and bore him a son. But the thing David had done, this pleased the Lord. The thing David had done, this pleased the Lord. The most important question in your life, in my life, in anyone's life is your life pleasing to the Lord? It's not whether you're successful in the eyes of people, whether you're smart in the eyes of people. It's whether you are pleasing to God. The most important question for all of us today is whether we will live today pleasing to the Lord. Whether anyone notices or doesn't notice. You go through your whole life and nobody notices. But if it's pleasing to the Lord, when Jesus sees you, he'll put his arms around you and say, "Well done, good and faithful servant." You can live your whole life trying to please people, and Jesus will say, "I never knew you." So life's most important question is to ask yourself, is my life pleasing to God? Is my life pleasing to the Lord? Because David looked good, but the thing David had done displeased God. To me, that's a scary verse. I don't want anything I do to displease God. Can you imagine that? I mean, that puts a fear in my heart just thinking about it. Can you imagine if God is looking at your life and he says, the thing that she did, the thing that he did displeases me? Wow. I would be afraid. I don't want anything in my life to displease the Lord. And to me, that's the scariest verse in the Bible. And in Galatians 1:10, this is what Paul says. He says, "Am I now trying to win the approval of human beings or of God? Or am I still trying to please people? If I was still trying to please people, I would not be a servant of God." So we have to choose. Am I going to please people? And even that can be the people closest to us. Or am I going to please God? And I don't know about you, but I want to live my life pleasing to the Lord. How about you? And so what I recommend you do is ask yourself each day, maybe in the morning pray, "God, help me to be pleasing to you."
Amen.
Maybe at the end of the day, evaluate your day. Was I pleasing to God? And if they find areas you were not, maybe in the way you responded to someone, maybe in what you focused on, and say, "I wasn't pleasing to God in that situation." Ask God for forgiveness. So we're going to pray today. As my assistant comes up to turn off the video, we're going to pray today, and I encourage you to ask yourself that prayer. Ask yourself that question. Is my life pleasing to God? Don't worry about what people think. Don't worry about whether they think you're successful or a failure. God is the right target to aim your life at.
Amen.
So if you need prayer, click on the link below or send me a comment. We'll be happy to pray for you. But pray today and live a life pleasing to God. God bless you.